So when I'm giving camera clubs talks about my images, the most common question I get asked is, how do you get the water so milky in your seascapes? Well, it's quite easy, and I'm going to tell you how to do it in this vlog. But a warning, doesn't start the best.
So I appreciate you might not be able to see me very well. The first thing you need for long exposure photography is darkness.
See? Cue intro.
Just so you understand the basics of the camera, there are three things that expect exposure. Okay, it's called the exposure triangle. So those three things are aperture, that's like the hole, the size of the hole in your lens. Okay, it can be wide, can be small. Shutter speed, just how quick the shutter closes, and also ISO, or ISO, used to be called ASA, which is called the film speed actually. And those three things you can adjust however you choose to get the correct exposure. They have to be in balance. So for instance, if it's dark, what you could do is turn the ISO right up. Okay, it makes the film or the digital sensor much more sensitive to exposure, to light, and that's good. The downsides to that are that the film or the sensor will get very grainy, very blocky. The pixels kind of group together and you get that horrible kind of everything's made of squares. It looks a bit like Minecraft, I guess. So that's why you need to use a lower ISO if possible. Shutter speed, you can leave it open for longer. We'll talk about that in a second. And aperture, you can open the lens right up. Okay, the benefits of opening the aperture right up are you get out of focus backgrounds, you get bokeh, and you get more light into the sensor and faster shutter speeds. Now for us, we want to take a nice blurry image of the water, so we need a nice slow shutter speed. So we would normally set the aperture down to either its lowest point or just below its lowest point. So in my case, I'm going to show you my camera in a second. I'm using my Fuji with a 55 to 140mm lens on, and I'm going to shut mine right down to f16 because I want a long exposure. The shutter speed is the other part of the triangle, and what we're looking for in long exposure photography is we're looking for something that's going to stay rigid. So in this case, there's a lighthouse I'm photographing. And he's not going to move, so that's not his job. But what is moving all around it is the water, because we're by the sea, it's in the sea, and also above us we have clouds which are moving. So if I can get a long enough exposure, when that shutter is open, the water and the clouds will move, okay, and they'll kind of record as a mist, but these things that are static in the image, like the lighthouse, will stay still. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the camera and show you what I'm doing.
Okay, so this is my setup that I had on the beach. Kind of. I've changed lenses. This is the 16 to 55 zoom. I was using the telephoto zoom at the time, but I used all manner of lenses on there. Fuji cameras are really easy to demonstrate. This really good to demonstrate because this ring here is called the aperture ring. Most manufacturers, it's all done on a dial up here. Okay, but you can hear that, hopefully, click 1, 2, 3. So there are third stops between the aperture numbers. Now if you look, we've got 4, and if I double that, I get 8. If I double that, I get 16. And if I double 5.6, I get 11.2. If I double that, I get f22. And what's happening with the aperture ring, f22, the aperture is really small, smaller than that probably. And if I got this end to 2.8, the aperture is quite wide. Now obviously more light will get in if the aperture is wide than if it's small. Okay, so to compensate, what we have to do, or what the camera will try and do if you leave it on automatic, is the camera will try and compensate by, as we go up this way, it will make the shutter speed longer, so it will take longer. The shutter will be open for a longer time. So if I look at this one, we've got A is automatic, but as you can see on the XT2, we've got 8 thousandths of a second, 4 thousandths, 2 thousandths of a second. So that is very, very, very fast, as you can probably work out. And all down this end, we've got half a second, 1 second, time, and then bulb mode. And this is what we've been using most of the while. I was using on the beach, because anything over 30 seconds, you need to do it yourself. So basically, as I hold the button in, the longer I hold the button in, let's do it now. You can see the timer comes up on the screen here. Okay, and that will show you how long I've had the shutter open for. Let go, and it closes. So generally what we want to be doing with that is working out the exposure, and that's how we do our long exposures. This is ISO dial. I've got it set to low, which is 100 ISO on the Fuji. But again, we've got 200, and you'll notice that 3 it doubles to 400, it doubles to 800, it doubles to 1600. So there is some logic in it. The further up here I go, the more sensitive the sensor is, and the more light it will pick up. There is a degradation to a certain extent in quality. So if I'm shooting right up here, and even it goes up even further than that, it will be very pixely. So I really, for landscapes and doing prints, I want to be down this end. A few years ago, I'd be using 100 ISO all the while, but the quality nowadays, even at 400 ISO, is still pretty good, unless you're doing really big prints. So I wouldn't have a problem with any of that. But for long exposure photography, I need the ISO to be as low as possible, because that will allow me to shut the aperture down, this one, which means that I can open up the shutter speed to compensate to get the correct exposure, which means I can use B. Okay, on the front here is a little ring, a wide angle adapter made by Lee, and that's where you'll see the filters in the video. So back to me on the beach.
So it's almost sunrise now. It's a lot lighter, as you can probably see, although the camera I'm recording this on will lighten things up anyway. But the exposure I'm getting at the moment, at f14, which is over f11, I'm getting this 2-second exposure, and I want to make that a little bit longer, so I'm going to use this. This is called a little stopper. As you can see, it's very dark. The camera's compensating for it, but it's basically what it does is reduces the light and allows me to extend the shutter speed. So I'm going to have the ISO right set down to the lowest that the camera will do, which is 100. I've got the aperture on f14. Okay, I could have that lower than that. I can go down to 22, but I'm going to have it on f14 because I've got 2-second exposure, and it comes with a compensation or a chart to work out what you need to exposure on, which is in this box, which I've taped to the front. So as you can see, it tells you what exposure you've got in green, and then what it needs to be when you have the filter on. Okay, and it tells me that it needs to be a 2-minute exposure. So this goes on in front of the camera. If you're using a DSLR, you need to make sure you cover up the eyepiece, because light can stray back through and the mirror's up. With the mirrorless camera that I'm using, you don't get the problem. It goes on the front, and I need to set a 2-minute exposure. So here we go. We've got just a hint of sunrise now. Actually, sun is risen about a minute ago, so we've just got a little bit. You probably can't see on this, but there's a little bit of colour now just underneath the clouds. Not the most spectacular, but it's been a nice day anyway. Actually, before the sun came up in the blue hour, it's been absolutely beautiful. Really, really pleased with today. So there's a long exposure going on. I'm actually now on a 4-minute exposure because looking at the histogram when the image came onto the screen, it was a bit on the shadowy side, so I've moved the histogram up by doubling the exposure. I'm looking at a high key shot for this. So a 4-minute exposure is going to completely blur the water, because the further away things are, the longer exposure you need to actually blur them, okay, because they don't appear to be as moving as quick. So 4-minute exposure is going to make it really nice and milky. I'm shooting a picture now of this little groin. Where are we? Ooh, yeah, this little defence there, a little close up. See what that looks like. It's about having fun, isn't it? That's what it's about. So just to recap the basics, shutter speed, aperture, ISO. You need the ISO as low as you can go. You need the aperture as high as it can go, and the shutter speed will be the one that you adjust, and you need that as long as you can. So have fun with your long exposures. We'll have a look back when I get back in Lightroom as to what I've got.
So there we go, long exposure photography. Important to say, the other thing you do need to do is to make sure you keep the camera absolutely still. So the best thing to use for that is a tripod. I use this beast, he's called Albert. Say hello. Okay, you don't have to use a tripod. You can use your jumper, lay it on the ground, you can use a wall. There's little, I've got one up here actually. Lots of little small tabletop tripods that you can use. This one I use for my iPhone, so you can attach that. Not very expensive. Okay, obviously the disadvantages are not really high. Or you can just rest it on a beanbag, but you have to keep the camera absolutely still. That's the main thing. Obviously, what you need, the only movement you need in the picture are the things you want to blur. So I hope you've enjoyed this vlog. I've enjoyed making it. It's not quite so long as usual, which is a good thing. I know it's a bit of a marathon. So thanks for watching once again. Subscribe if you want to see any more updates. Press the like button at the bottom would be great. I've got no links to leave this time. Check out my other videos if you have a spare hour or so. I'm going to leave you with just a couple of outtakes. Don't seem to be able to do any vlogs without something going wrong, but I hope you enjoy them anyway. So once again, thanks ever so much for watching.
And those three, oops, oh my word, whoa, wow.